Hi, I'm Dr. Mary Bellin. Welcome to Sacred Dreaming. Today we're going to talk a little bit about dreams surrounding the time of death and dying. And we're going to do that in three ways. We're going to talk about the dreams of someone who is dying, and we're going to talk about the dreams of someone who might be accompanying someone as they die, such as a family member or friend or nurse or hospital person in some way. And we're going to talk about dreams of people who survive somebody who has recently died. Now, before we go to those stories, I want to just make a couple of comments. Obviously, dreams in the season of death and dying often contain themes of grief and reconciliation. Sometimes there's life review that goes on. Sometimes there are dreams of bonds between the living and the dead, whether the person dying and people who have passed before, or the person dying and the people that will survive him or her. And then there are sometimes themes of comfort and reassurance that occur in the dreams of people who are dying or those who love someone who is dying. We want to remember that dreams, in all senses, carry symbolic meaning. So whenever a person has a dream in the season of death or dying, it is also a dream about transformation. It's about dream of change, because obviously the person who is dying is going through a period of transformation, as well as their beloveds that they will be leaving behind. And so the dreams will sometimes take symbols of transformation to help a person anchor in that idea, sometimes to bring comfort, strength, or just recognition. Sometimes as we go through changes in our lives, different parts of us become expressed, and this is true in the dreams of death and dying also. I also want to mention before I tell the stories, is that the unconscious, the collective unconscious that contains the great archetypes, and the personal unconscious that contains all of the memories and experiences that a person has had that are tucked beneath the surface of the mind, these can emerge in the dreams of the death and dying also. So we might get great archetypes of holy people, of angelic people, and we also might get memories of loved ones that have lived in our hearts, but maybe we haven't thought about them in a long time, and they appear to us in the dreams. The first dream I'm going to talk about for a moment comes from David Blum. He was a concert conductor and composer who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he created a video called Appointment with the Wise Old Dog, which I highly suggest you download and watch, or I think you can order it also. And in that video, he shows us a series of paintings that he completed that describe dream visions that he had on the journey as he approached death. It takes place over the course of maybe a year or two, but he created all of these tremendous watercolors of the images that came to him in the dream world. And he calls the video Appointment to the Wise Old Dog because the first image that comes to him is the image of his childhood stuffed animal, his little dachshund. And of course, this little dachshund is now accompanying him on the journey. And David Blum also introduces a character that came to him in the dream, and that is of this angelic woman who brings him peace and joy and fulfillment. And now she is going with him as he travels in the dreamland through kind of a spiritual landscape of different places and people. And as he tells the story of his dreams, you can see that he is gravitating towards the transition that he will be going through between this life and the life to come. The second story I want to tell has to do with a woman who was accompanying her young daughter. The young daughter was dying, And it's a very tragic story. I think the little girl was 6 or 7. And shortly before her death, the mom had this dream. She was boarding a train with her little girl. It was like a commuter train, maybe like a subway in New York City or the Chicago L. And she gets on the train with the little girl, and they're riding along. And of course, the train stops at different places. And each time the train stops, some people get off and some people get on. And she becomes aware that they're going to come to a stop where they are going to get off. But what happens in the dream is they come to the stop and the little girl gets off and the mom cannot get off. But as the doors open at this stop, she sees on the platform a figure that she identifies as Jesus. And her little girl exits the train and goes onto the platform and is wrapped into the arms of Jesus. And then the train door slides closed and the train goes on. The woman that I heard tell this dream said that it was both heartbreaking and comforting. And she was, in fact, a religious woman of Christian persuasion. And so it was natural, I think, that for her, the person who would come to collect her little girl was Jesus. And that gave her a sense of comfort. But it was also this heartbreaking moment of letting go. The final story I'll tell you occurred some years ago when I was pastoring in upstate New York. There was a couple in my church. They were very professional people. He was an engineer at GE and she had a PhD in nutrition. They were retired now. And the husband passed away. And in their home, they had a library which was composed of all the books, both for their professional work, but also just from their travels and novels they had loved and so forth. And they had this whole library. And this woman had gone into the library and picked out a book to read and was sitting in a comfortable chair by the window when she said the whole room just filled with this warm, glowing light. And there, on the opposite side of the room from her, stood her husband. And she said it was just like he was there in person. And he stood there for a moment, and she was just frozen, looking at him. And he said to her, "It's all okay. It's all okay." And then, he disappeared. Now, it's interesting about this dream, which she came to talk to me about because she had never had, and she did believe he had ever had any kind of, experience like that. And she wanted to talk to me about it, just to kind of go over it. It wasn't the kind of thing she felt comfortable just sharing, with her friends. But I think we can understand what happened to her is a hypnagogic dream, which is something that sort of occurs between when we're sort of awake and sort of asleep, kind of in that in-between period. And there she saw him. And for her, it was also of great comfort. And she felt like he had come to sort of let her know that it was all okay and that it would be okay. It was very comforting for her. And so there we have some dreams where we talk about the symbols of the dream that take us forward through this transitional time and liminal space, because the dream is occurring in liminal space. When we are in the season of death or dying, it's different from other time in our life because it is always a time of transformation. The person dying will go from being alive to being dead and wherever the soul becomes post this life. And the people who are accompanying that person go through a transformation of letting go and yet reviewing and reclaiming what the nature of that relationship was for them. So in any case, these are some of the issues that arise in the dreams of the death and dying and people who accompany them. I may come back next month and talk a little bit more about this, but I hope that this has been an interesting video for you to watch on this subject. Thanks for watching. Bye.